Well, hello and welcome to another episode of More Perfect Marketing. It's David Baer here, and I'm curious, what do you get when you cross someone who has spent time in the fashion world, in cooking both for celebrities and running a catering business of her own, spending time in the corporate world, and now serving business owners, developing, marketing, and telling their stories? Well, you get today's guest, Aleya Harris, who is joining me from, well, I'm not entirely sure where you're joining me from. I assume you're in Southern California.
I am in Southern California. I'm in Burbank, California, to be hyper specific.
Excellent. Well, I know that world reasonably well. I have family down there, and I'm curious to sort of dive into some of that history that I just shared very briefly and understand sort of what's the through thread from where you started out to where you are today.
The general controlling idea of my very circuitous career journey has been trying to find the best excuse to show people that I love them. I know that sounds like a very odd thing for a marketing agency owner to say, but it is the truth, very much so. I started out in the fashion industry and the cosmetic industry, and I was like, gosh, this isn't for me. I just can't get into it. It's very superficial. And I was, hawking $400 jeans that cost $20 to make and made your butt look flat. And I just couldn't get my mind around it. Luckily, I didn't have to, because I was laid off from my cosmetic industry job. And the universe made the decision for me. And I was looking for anything and everything I could do. I just needed a job. I was applying for everything. And this is before even Uber was a thing. So I was stuck.
Mm-hmm.
One day my friend was at my house and she said, you should go to culinary school. And I said, well, not doing anything else besides scrapbooking, which, by the way, if you don't have a job, scrapbooking is not a good hobby. It's very expensive.
Okay. I've discovered puzzles are as well. So yes.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. So I went to Le Cordon Bleu for 2 years. And while I was there, I was finally able to get an inkling of what it felt like to live a heart-led life, a life where I could translate my intended assignment here on earth to other people through food. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie or read the book Like Water for Chocolate, where, she cooks and her feelings go into the food. It was similar to that, except in a more positive way. Like, I never made anybody throw up or cry, but more like feel loved and supported and cared for. I remember I worked, like you said, for lots of celebrities and traveled all over the world as a private chef. And often they just wanted a sense of the familiar, a sense that someone took time with their food, that someone loved them, that someone was there for them. And that's how I was able to kind of work my secret sauce in and use food as an excuse to do that, to help them feel loved. But, helping other people feel loved while you're at their beck and call and not really in control of your own time, and, kind of like feeling like you aren't living up to your potential. I mean, there's limits, right?
Sure.
So I applied and actually, to my surprise, got accepted to work at Google as a vendor partner on their global food team. And it was still something very similar. I got a chance to work with food, work with behavioral economics, work with food scientists and the future of food, to understand how were people going to be able to survive, and surviving and thriving are critical to making sure that you are taking care of yourself and having that love as that through thread. From there, I rose up to my partner company, or my parent company, as the head of marketing for North America, and the love was gone. It had just evaporated. It was surrounded by bald men in blue suits. And I was like, what am I doing? I've lost the controlling idea that I was slowly starting to understand on why I was here and what I was designed to do to serve other people. So while I was there, I started my own company. I mean, it looks nothing like what it does today, but technically it's the same company if you want to get technical about it.
And this is
And
Flourish Marketing is what you're referring
Flourish
to?
Marketing.
Okay.
It had a different name, and I'm going to tell you why it had a different name, because that name was going to make me broke. It was called Food and Beverage Media and Marketing. I was laid off for the second time, February 2020. And I said, that's fine. I'm going to, take all of my knowledge and I'm going to strike out and I'm going to go back to working with people who I like. Wedding, catering, and events people. I don't know whether you remember what happened in March 2020, but there was something called COVID-19.
I'm going to have to look that one up.
Does it ring familiar to you? It was a global pandemic that swept and touched everyone, and especially those whose job it was to gather people together. And as a company called Food and Beverage Media and Marketing, only working for the wedding, catering, and events industry, I was kind of SOL.
Yes.
So I rebranded to Flourish Marketing, broadened my scope, broadened the audience, still continued to serve within the wedding, catering, and events industry, and finally was still able to strike back to my controlling idea of finding ways to love people through what I did. The most loving thing I think you can do for other people is help them discover who they really are, translate that out to the world, and have people pay them to just be who they are and to give their natural talents in a way that makes sense. And so that's what we do at Flourish Marketing. We help people become radically authentic so that they can transform from industry leaders to legends through messaging, strategy, and copywriting. I get to use words based off of people's innermost personality and characteristics to help them build companies and businesses that take them to the next level.
That's awesome. And thank you for walking us through the story. You mentioned this term that you have on your website, radical authenticity. And as I was listening to you talk, I was thinking, okay, well, I'm hearing behavioral science, I'm hearing psychology, I'm hearing, about the authenticity and being real. This is one major component of what I believe you guide clients through, is getting real as sort of the first step in the process. And I'm wondering how this all is applied, right? So there's a lot of these components that in marketing we work on positioning around psychology and relationship, etc. That's not seen, but it's very much experienced by the people that the businesses that we work with serve. And so I'm curious how you work through that process with clients.
Sure. So our framework is built on the intersection of energy alignment and business strategy. So energy alignment means you can't just read every business book in history and then now you know how to run a business. But then you need to add the business strategy component, because just rubbing crystals on it isn't going to work either. So in the beginning, what we do is, I'm also a Nest Health certified bioenergetic practitioner.
Okay.
We use bioenergetic business coaching to pinpoint exactly where you are off, where your energetic stumbling blocks are, and why you just can't seem to get past what the thing is that you've been struggling with. A lot of people say, oh, it's a mental block, or it's a mentality, and it's a shift. If it were that easy to shift your mentality by yourself, you would have done it already.
Yeah.
So something else is afoot. So we help unearth what that is so that we can finally dig deeper into who you are and develop a messaging strategy that is theft proof. It's theft proof because it is uniquely yours. If you think about people who have been brave enough and vulnerable enough to step out into their true story, those are the people that we end up calling legends. If we think of Sarah Blakely, the CEO of Spanx, so now she's replacing herself.
Right. She just announced her replacement. Exactly.
Exactly. Which in and of itself is a huge feat. Most people who are, I don't even think she's a small business owner anymore. Most people who are business owners don't ever get to the place of being able to replace ourselves, right? The business just kind of closes when you're no longer the CEO. Well, how has she been able to experience such success? Well, she saw a problem that other people had. She was very honest and open about said problem. She said, you don't like your roll sticking out your clothes, basically. You want to smooth that on out. I can help you do that. And she showed realness in herself and real people that were experiencing that problem. And now she's worth, I don't even know how much, obscene amount of money, right?
Well, she's been on several different billionaire podcasts, so I'm guessing it is an obscene amount of money. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, he definitely has a B. Definitely has a B, not an M,
Yes.
in her amount. And if you think about other legends who do the same thing, we think of Laverne Cox, we think of Oprah, we think of Jeff Bezos, love him or hate him. They find their own lane despite what other people say is the quote unquote correct way to do things.
Yeah.
We help you find that lane. And now, can I guarantee you will be a billionaire with a B like Sarah Blakely? No, but can I guarantee that you're going to be much better off than you were when you were copying the website copy off of your competitor and trying to like tweak it to make it your own because you don't know what else to do? Yes. Yes, I can guarantee you'll be in a better place than when you do that, which is what most people do. They look out, they have an idea, and then what do they do as soon as they think that they have a good idea? They go out and Google to see if somebody else can validate that idea. They go and look at their competitors or their who they want to be like, their gurus, and like, well, it's kind of like this, so I feel safe and I feel okay. As opposed to using their internal guidance and their intuition in combination with data and analytics to step and forge a new path. And that's what I encourage people to do.
So you talked about the bioenergetic coaching element to what you've done, and we have done something similar at a certain point. We realized when we were working with business owners, gosh, we're getting some friction, we're getting resistance. We have to figure out what's in the way, or that there's a lack of alignment between the thing they say they want and what we're applying to their business in terms of marketing and positioning, right? I'm curious, what caused you to introduce that element to the work that you do with your clients?
I was tired of compartmentalizing myself. So I was a marketing person. I've been a marketing person for over a decade. And on the side, I was also a spiritual coach. People gravitate towards me to help them figure their life out, whether I like it or not. It's always been something that has been very natural to me. And I have the ability to use people's spiritual guides and their intuition to guide them. And it's the thing that I would do for free. It's one of those excuses to love people, right? That I was talking about earlier. Then I'm like, I wonder what would happen if I did this and then someone could see like a real bottom line ROI from this. What would that look like? And as soon as I asked that question, bioenergetics fell into my lap. Didn't know anything about it before. It's a tool and a study that Ness Health has developed over 30 years of research. And it's actually a software tool, which I know sounds ridiculous. I'm fully there with you. It's a software tool that uses, and you're Googling, those are Google eyes. Those are like, what? Are you talking? You're not Googling? Are you sure? Are you sure?
No hands on the keyboard.
Okay, I'm watching you. It's a software tool that is a proprietary system that they use the software to read your body's energy field. So if you think about how when you listen to the melodic sound of my voice right now, you don't actually see the sound waves coming out of my mouth, but you are hearing them and your ears are picking them up. In the same way, your body transmits energy. If that's too woo of a concept for you, let's take it to quantum physics. On a quantum physics level, you have particles and waves, and a unit of energy can be both a particle and wave at the same time or in different states, depending on if they're observed or not. When you take that particle and that wave and you observe it or you move through it, it changes shape and changes function and affects the environment with which it's in. Everything on a subatomic level is made up of particles and waves. That is energy. Now you add information, and information adds shape to those particles and waves. That's why, like, my hand is separate from my keyboard. They're both made of technically the same stuff, but the information tells my hand to be my hand and the keyboard to be the keyboard. Thank God, because I do not want a keyboard. When you are reading your energy field, there's a lot of distortions that have told you to feel a certain way, be a certain way, think a certain way. They're also the same distortions that cause a lot of dis-ease in the body. When you are rolling with those distortions for an extended period of time, they become emotional hangups that you cannot get over. The good thing is that instead of spending 6 years in therapy to try to figure out what they are, you use the proprietary software from the Nest Health System to say, oh yeah, let's talk about forgiveness. Who am I not forgiving? And of course, I ask more in-depth questions than that. And usually there are tears involved when we get to the root of it. And we find out that you're not forgiving your father because he wronged you in some way. And now you feel unworthy. And that, oh, by the way, is why you're not pricing yourself highly enough. And why you keep giving pushback to people who tell you to double your prices and you feel like you don't deserve it.
Yeah.
That can happen within a week versus 6 years because you're able to target what the problem is. And once I was able to use my own spiritually gifted situation plus the software tool that's based off of years of research and quantum physics and introduce it to business owners, we were able to get amazing results that I couldn't get by just saying, hey, yeah, I'll write your email sequence for you.
So a follow-up question on this, because this is fascinating. And as far as I can tell, it's really just a different path into something that can be accomplished. You know, what others might do is some form of a core values assessment, or it might be, you know, one of those other assessment tools. And while forgive me, although I never offend people usually when I say this, what you've just described sounds a little woo-woo. That there's actually really accessible outcome as a result of it. So I'm curious how your clients either embrace the process or look forward to the results of the process.
They usually start off being terrified. It's so funny to me. Every single client is like, oh, I'm afraid of what you're going to find. And I'm afraid you're going to judge me. And I'm afraid you're going to, and I'm like, really? First of all, whatever's there, you probably already know is there. And that's why you're scared of me finding it. But I am not here to judge you. I'm here to help you. You're literally paying me to help you. And I, as you can tell, always interject a little bit of humor, a lot of bit of care, and feel like tears are money rivers. Usually if we get to the place where you start crying, that means that you are finally unlocking that thing that has been holding you back for all of these years. There is apprehension at the beginning of a session, but always 100% after the end of the first session. And sometimes people, most of the time, if they are just coming in for strategy, we just have one session, unless they sign on for a retainer product, they feel lighter, they feel bolder, they feel more confident, they feel seen, they feel heard, they feel ready to step out into that messaging that we develop because they have been able to see in black and white in front of their face how fixing some of those energy misses or energy, you know, things that are a little bit off can take them to where they've been wanting to be all along.
And so you gave an example a moment ago of misalignment with the way that somebody was pricing themselves or their business or their offer as a result of something in their past. What are the types of things that you, marketing wise and business promotion wise, are able to help people embrace or uncover as a result of this?
Besides pricing, which is a huge one, it's also marketing techniques or strategies. Most of the time, showing up with your face. So people don't like to show up for their businesses because they have a lot of hangups around speaking on a stage. To public speaking, you know, I forget what the stat is, but it's like more fear than death, right? Like people fear public speaking more than death, which I think is hilarious. As a public speaker, I'm on a stage and that's one of my happy places, right? Why is that? And it's going to be different for everybody. Why is it for you? And if that is a marketing strategy that we really should be implementing, because you have a great story, you have a great product, you have something that needs to be said from a stage, you're a natural teacher, well, you're never going to get on that stage if you don't resolve that energy block, for example. Another thing that we help people resolve is content creation. The blockage is usually, I don't have anything to say, or no one will listen to me, or it's already been said before better than I could ever do it. So why bother? I had a client like this. Her name was Diane. She hadn't created content in 6 months. Content creation prior to that was her number one way of helping to drive revenue for her business. So as you can see, the revenue had dropped. Because imposter syndrome basically had set in. We started working together. She created what was it, 4 weeks of content in 6 days or something along. Don't quote me on those exact numbers, but somewhere around there, because she felt like she could open up again. Those passageways were open again, and then revenue started coming in again. And then she felt more empowered to realign her business to something that fit how she was and who she was more effectively. And now she's making a lot more money. So it all fits in. You can't compartmentalize who you are and the experience you've had as a human being up until this point and your success or lack thereof in business. You have to look at it as a holistic perspective, especially because the clients we work with are not loser people. They've experienced success. It's not that they're like, I'm broke eating, top ramen in the corner, but they always are type A, and they're frustrated because they cannot get to the next level and they can't figure out what that is. If you've done all of the other things and you can't figure out what is wrong, most likely you need to try something different in order to get the result that you're looking for. And we offer a unique approach that is still very much based in data and strategy, but it has a different entry point and allows you to open up to different messaging and a different pathway that you might not have otherwise.
So you've talked about, and I do want to get to that framework that we both referenced earlier, your process, but you talked about the example of getting out there, being seen, and connecting either on stages or video or webinars or what have you. Is this approach applicable to any sort of business, or does it have to be a business that is focused or centered around an individual?
No, I actually also work with executive teams with the same exact framework. If you think about it, say you're a larger company, and we work with companies anywhere between 500,000 to 10 million for our main standalone services, and then executive training tend to be companies over 10 million. When you are in a room with your team and you're talking about the future of your company, and you're looking at Gen Z and you're looking at your current team members, and people are resigning left and right to go find themselves in Tibet, or they're quiet quitting. They're still technically there, but they're not really there anymore, right? And you're like, well, what are we going to do? And the next generation that's coming up is like, well, y'all have screwed this up royally. I'm definitely not doing it the way you were doing it before, and I have different expectations. So people are like, well, just slap someone younger on the website and call it a day. I know what it is. Make sure that there's like Black and brown people on the website too, so that we can say that we're diverse, and let's just move on. Yeah, that might have worked maybe 10 years ago, maybe not even then, but you could have pretended that it did.
Sure.
Nowadays, not even close. People smell a fake and a fraud and a phony from 5 million miles away, because they have been conditioned over the past several years of that pandemic that I told you about, that COVID-19 thing. I know it's totally,
which I promise I'll look up as soon as we're done. Yeah.
Okay, good. They've been conditioned over the pandemic to figure out who they are, what they want, where their values align, how they want to spend their time. Do they really want to spend 4 hours a day commuting into an office or not? Do some people actually enjoy it? They're like, please let me get out of this house, right? Who are they? Now you can't show up as an executive team and pretend like none of that happened. which unfortunately is what a lot of people are doing. They're like, well, let's just go back to status quo. I'm like, no, that no longer exists. So if you're an executive team, we do executive leadership training around how to become radically authentic as individuals, how to then put that into the C-suite so that you're messaging internally and externally the same thing, and that you're writing copy internally and externally that match. And my husband has his doctorate in educational leadership with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I bring him along just to make sure you're not offending people.
That is awesome. I love that last element in particular. Okay,
Yeah.
so this process, this framework that we've teased a couple of times, it starts with getting real, then you focus on clarity, and then connection. And you made a really interesting point that I want to reinforce, which is internal and external activities, because I think all of those things can be applied even to that $500,000, revenue business as well. Even if it's a single person, I imagine internally you may be telling yourself things that you need to change.
Yes. And your internal should match your external. And if it doesn't, ooh, you in danger, girl, because that's when you will run out of leeway very quickly and you're going to put your foot in your mouth. It's just going to happen. And you're right. It doesn't matter what size you are, small or large. It happens a little bit more visibly when you're larger, but when you're smaller, and you're sitting there behind your computer and you're burned out, and you still show up on Instagram like everything's okay. How does that sit with you in your integrity? Why not show up on Instagram? It's not complaining and whining and all of that stuff, but say, hey, I am so burned out. These are the 3 things that I did to burn myself out. These are the 3 things I'm going to use to get out of it. Where are you at? And you start building community, as opposed to trying to hide your authenticity. That's better marketing. Marketing for me is building lucrative relationships, and people put an emphasis on the lucrative part and they forget the relationship part. And the best type of relationships are when you show up as a whole human being. It's a whole human, meeting a whole human and having a relationship. You can't expect to do that if the way you show up is only as half of yourself, because you're afraid that you will not be accepted as the rest. So you need to get real with, well, how are you feeling? What are you doing? And also that opens up rivers for help, for opportunity, for abundance, for meeting the right people, for getting connected with who you need to be connected with, as opposed to pretending that everything is okay, pretending that you have a value system that you do not. I would rather you come out and say, yes, we are blatant racists here at Company X, and this is how we roll, rather than pretending that you're not. Right? I would rather you say, like how I say, I am going to rub crystals on it. It will happen. I will probably send you a crystal in the mail after we're done with our strategy session. You're going to love it. Right? I would rather come out and say that than be like, oh, I hope that they are okay with me, having this crystal just off camera and lighting this candle behind my computer so they can't see it. Right? Otherwise, it's not going to work. I can't be fully helpful if I'm hiding half of me.
Well, I think that goes back to a very practical tenet of direct response copywriting and in marketing in general, which is claim a position as firmly as you possibly can, because you're going to get some people running toward you and some people running away from you. But it's a lot easier to get people running toward you and away from you, or toward you is the one that we want, right? If you actually claim a position rather than try to blend in like everybody else, or as you said, go and see what your competitor is doing and just copy them, right?
Exactly. I think about it this way. Let's say everybody in the world is a pink light, a yellow light, a green light, a blue light. Everyone has their light color. And if you're like this dim little flickering pink light somewhere off in the distance, you're never going to attract any of the other pink lights to you, right? You're not going to attract anybody to you. You can barely be seen. But if your job is to shine that pink light until it is fluorescent and lights up the whole world. And all of the other pink lights come to you, and the yellow lights and the green lights are repulsed because you are not their jam, but you have every single pink light in the world calling your name. You've done your job.
Yeah. And I think if listeners are paying attention, and I certainly hope you are, you've picked up on some of the ways that Aleya is actually demonstrating this right in this conversation. Some of the things that we've talked about, areas that you tend to focus on in terms of how you run your business, right? Remember that woo-woo thing we were talking about earlier? That's going to attract certain people and detract other people. And that's exactly what you want. I hope.
Exactly what I want. It is exactly what I want. If you're like, oh my gosh, who is this quack? I am not your person.
Mhm.
Thank goodness. Go with God. But if you're like, I actually had a Reiki energy healing like last week, I'm like, let's talk.
Perfect.
You are my person.
And so you tell this story of yourself and of the people that you wish to serve and how you serve them very effectively on your website. You also talk about
That
some
means that I'm
things.
doing my job.
You also do some things on your website, which I want to ask you about now. And so we're going to shift the conversation slightly, because you talk about who you are as an individual, which is great, because I usually want to know, who is this person? I'm going to share something. So somebody just showed up on my calendar who is going to be a guest on the podcast in the future. Shared their website link. I interview primarily marketing agency owners. So I went over to this agency owner's website. There's not a single name of an individual. There is not any photography except clearly, blatantly stock photography.
Oh, babe.
And on the about page, it is so generic. I have no idea what they stand for. So this is the pink little light that you were just talking about not being very effective. But you are doing the exact opposite and following the formula that you just described. And so there are two things that I really want to know about.
Okay.
Before we started recording, we shared a little bit about our mutual interest in food and beverage, apparently, because one of the features of you on your website is the fact that you're interested in Japanese whiskey.
I love Japanese whiskey. Well, at the time of this recording, I am 8 months pregnant. So I have not had said Japanese whiskey in a while. However, before this little girl decided to bless me with the opportunity of being her mommy, I could take a bottle of Kokori and sit like outside and just contemplate life in little sips with the big rock glass, with the big, ice rock. And that is like my happy place.
So for those of us, including myself, who don't know, I've tasted whiskey from Scotland. I've tasted whiskey from Kentucky. I've actually tasted Japanese and Korean whiskey as well, although they're not terribly memorable from what I can tell. What is distinctive about Japanese whiskey?
For me, and everyone is going to have a different story, the same way if you ask somebody, why do you like Pinot? It's like, okay, well, they're going to tell you all kinds of different stories because every Pinot is different. I like that it has a peatier finish, but also some of them are so floral. It's very similar to Scotch, but they're light. They're a little bit more nuanced and refined than like a bourbon, like a Kentucky straight bourbon. And at the same time, I believe it is, I haven't drank it in so while, I haven't even thought about it, but I believe it is Kokori that is distilled from rice. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry if I'm wrong. And it just has a sensibility about it that is like, you can drink me easily, but I'm going to stand in your palate and stand with the food that you put me with and hold my own without feeling like I need to punch you in the jaw. And there's also, for some of them, has like a nice caramel sweetness to it without feeling, like an additive or anything like that. Or again, it's not heavy handed. It feels It feels very similarly to me like a Japanese culture would, where it's not heavy-handed, but there still has the tradition that it's steeped in, and yet they're breaking the mold at the same time from what we think of as Americans kind of owning like that bourbon finish or the Scotch feeling from Scotland.
Yeah, no, I can see how that taps into the personality and also just the culinary sensibility, the palate of the Japanese diet seems to be much subtler as well. So I appreciate that. All right, I'm sorry that I brought this up while you are in a period where you're not drinking. So to allow you to get back at me, I have one other question. And since we are recording this on Yom Kippur and I happen to be fasting today, tell me about good mac and cheese.
Okay, now good mac and cheese. There is bad mac and cheese. And I'm not even counting Kraft is not mac and cheese. So let's just get like, I don't know what that is. That is a processed food item that was designed in a laboratory. We're not talking about that. Good mac and cheese must be baked, first of all. Needs to involve an egg, second of all, right? It needs to have a custardy component. When you put it in the oven, it should have like a firm jiggle going on, not a watery situation, or not like I made this pasta and I poured some sauce over it. No. You start off that sauce with a good bechamel sauce, right? Traditionally made. You got your roux with the flour and the butter. Put in that milk in with the traditional bechamel. Needs to have at least 5 kinds of cheese that happen in there, ranging from mild to sharp, and it needs to be seasoned. Can you tell I have a culinary degree? It needs to be seasoned, not just with, I don't know why people put parsley in like it's like a thing, like it's gonna like change dramatically the flavor of it. I'm talking about like real seasoning. I also like to use finely diced onions. It needs to have finely diced garlic in there, and should have a little bit of a spice, not like spicy, but have a little bit of a, ooh, that's nice feeling. Put it in the oven. You take it out, it has a golden brown cheesy crust on top of it. And you need to use a big spoon to dive into it. And that is good mac and cheese. Even better if you saute some lobster and then you put that on top when you're done. That is exceptional mac and cheese.
That is so decadent, and I look forward to doing that probably after I have finished breaking my fast. So thank you.
I would have not done it if you had not asked.
Well, thank you. And maybe that's when I get back to Maine next year and we can get fresh lobster right out of the ocean. We'll go ahead and get a texturally complex, slightly spiced mac and cheese. I love that. Great suggestion. All right. I think by now our listeners should have a very clear sense of who you are, what you stand for, what you believe in, what you salivate over, and I think we should let people know before we wrap up where they can find out more about you.
Absolutely. Please visit our website that David has so lovingly combed through. It is flourishmarketing.co, not .com, .co. You can also hang out with me on the gram at Aleya Harris is the best way to find me, ALEYAHARRIS. And I'm also on LinkedIn, hang out there as well. If you want to download some free content, especially like how to revamp your messaging using our framework, you can go to flourishmarketing.co/freebies. We have a bunch of free downloads there to kind of get your wet your whistle a little bit about what we do here at Flourish Marketing.
Perfect. Well, we will, of course, have all of those links in the show notes. Aleya Harris, thank you so much for hanging out and spending time with our audience today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Folks, this has been another episode of More Perfect Marketing. Listen, if you found something fascinating in this episode that you would like to share with someone else in your life, please, by all means, do. Until next time, I'm David Baer. We'll see you back here soon. Take care.